Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Anchor Group podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking with one of our Anchor Group developers, Max, who specializes in BigCommerce development. We'll talk about some of the buckets that BigCommerce development tasks kind of fall within, and we'll kind of get into the weeds in each of those to understand the specific roles and responsibilities of a BigCommerce developer. And towards the end of the episode, we'll get into a little bit about headless commerce, which is a buzzword you're going to hear out there these days in the media surrounding e-commerce. So we'll dig into that a little bit. Here at Anchor Group, Max has been on a podcast before talking about headless commerce, but today we want to take a little bit of a different spin. We want to talk about what is the role of a BigCommerce developer. That's a common question we get. We've got some articles on our website about it, but we're going to go ahead and spend a couple minutes here just breaking down the responsibilities and role of a BigCommerce developer when developing a BigCommerce website or within a BigCommerce project. Max, thanks for joining today. How are you doing?
Living the dream yourself.
Living the dream, that's right. Very good. Well, last time we had you on, we talked about headless commerce. We took it from a high-level approach and dove into the weeds on it. So today, we're going to take a step back and really talk about what a BigCommerce developer does. Skills, capabilities, stuff like that. So let's start with the basics, Max, and I'll kind of hand this question over to you. But like at a high level, what does a BigCommerce developer do?
Yeah. I think at a high level, there's really three core tasks that we perform. The first would be implementation. So implementation of a new BigCommerce storefront, whether that's on headless or stencil. We're in there, we're applying the theme, we're maybe making theme changes where they're needed for your specific business need, and we're kind of in there just making sure that your store is ready to launch, and that any functionality you need is there. The second is extension. We do development on the BigCommerce backend, creating things like apps to extend the BigCommerce platform for whatever it is your business needs to do. And then the third, which is probably the most crucial piece of a BigCommerce, especially enterprise level build, is we do integration. So we take external applications, data that may need to flow from whether it's your ERP, product inventory management systems, and we integrate those with BigCommerce so you have accurate data without necessarily needing to manage that data in two places. So
those
are really
are
the
three
core
important
roles.
parts to many of the projects we work on here at Anchor Group. Now, Max, before we dig into those three kind of sections more, let's learn a little bit about you. Like, how long have you been developing for? What platforms are you really comfortable with? Can you share a little bit of information about your background with those listening today?
My background's in computer science and data science from like an education perspective. So got a degree in both computer and data science. I've been developing since I was in high school, so that's quite a bit of time now. Just writing web applications mostly. Kind of went through various areas of web development, and now I find myself in e-commerce. So working on e-commerce specific applications for the most part and integrations with that. I've been with Anchor Group for 1.5 years now, developing specifically on BigCommerce. So working on BigCommerce implementations and then as well as some integrations on the back end. So that's kind of my background.
So, Max, question for you on that. You said past 1.5 years you've been focusing more of your development time specifically on BigCommerce. So how does BigCommerce compare to some of those other platforms you've worked on in the past?
Yeah, so BigCommerce is very traditional, or fits in very well with a lot of web development knowledge. They have your classic API endpoints that you can hit and use kind of as your to leverage for customizing your storefront, as well as you need to have other knowledge, you have to be knowledgeable in other areas of web development. So we pull in external services. We, from time to time, have to spin up things like serverless functions. We have to go into Cloudflare from time to time. We have to go into AWS from time to time, depending on the problem that we're solving. And we spend, so it's very similar to the web, but in my experience, I've just spent a lot of time learning the BigCommerce API. So when you hear BigCommerce developer, think of a developer that knows a lot about the web, but then also is very knowledgeable in kind of those BigCommerce specific API endpoints. So creating customizations with that API, referencing the API docs almost every day. So just becoming just someone who's more knowledgeable about kind of the customizations and the abilities that BigCommerce has, rather than, and then on top of that, just all of that additional web development knowledge.
Yeah, that's all important to be able to have that web development knowledge and then also know the intricacies of the BigCommerce platform. And let's get into that a little bit more. Max, a second ago, you highlighted the fact that for a BigCommerce developer, there's kind of three parts to it. You said an implementation piece, there's an extension piece, and then there's also an integration piece. So now let's get into some of the specifics about the implementation piece of this. So when we think about the bucket of implementation, what roles or responsibilities or what tasks are within that implementation piece of BigCommerce development?
Yeah, so for a developer specifically, it's going to revolve a lot around your storefront for the most part. We're going to be doing things like making theme changes that you need for your front end. So maybe you're going with an out-of-the-box theme that needs a few tweaks here and there, or has some rough edges that you want rounded out for your specific business needs. And then we'll make the changes that you need there, and then we'll do all the testing around those changed areas as well. The second kind of piece is any customization you have that relies within the storefront. And so maybe you need a additional page within the My Account section for whatever reason it may be. We're gonna be the ones who go in. We're gonna add that page. We're gonna write the code for the page. Any scripting that needs to be done for front end functionality, any API calls that need to be made to the back end. We're the ones who are doing the work for that. And then we're probably also going to assist in various project management tasks. So from time to time, we'll hop in, we'll do app installation and setup for a new app that needs to get spun up just to help our project managers out. But we also do have a project management side of things that helps you migrate your inventory data when you don't need a developer. Sometimes you need to do a special inventory mapping that we will hop in with. So it just kind of depends around those edges.
What I hear you saying is when it comes to the more intricate parts or the parts that a customer is not going to see, right? The back end data of the front end, right? The code that lays underneath, the interactive layer on the front end. Now, you mentioned theme development, and the great part about BigCommerce is that there is a theme marketplace with very affordable pre-made themes that merchants can simply go and select and install and configure onto their BigCommerce environment. And that's a little bit different from some of the other prominent e-commerce platforms out there. For example, Shopify. Shopify also has a theme marketplace, but those themes, there's many, many more themes on there than on BigCommerce. Thousands on Shopify versus hundreds on BigCommerce. And the Shopify themes tend to be a little bit more expensive than the ones on BigCommerce. And the functionality of them, sometimes can be a little hit or miss, on any pre-configured theme. You just got to be very cognizant of the one you're picking, and you want to do your homework on it. That's for sure. Now, with all that being said, that's a route that people go regularly, right? Many merchants use those pre-made themes, specifically right now on BigCommerce. But Max, what about developing a custom theme? Because how much are developers involved in that, and what does the process of developing a custom theme really look like?
Yeah. So we do custom theme projects as well, where we have one of our designers internally come in. They'll typically do a couple workshops with you or with the client, and they will kind of build a theme that's specific for your business. Then on the BigCommerce side, the development side, we'll actually go in, we'll take that mock-up that we're given, and we'll build out that theme for you. And we do that both. We offer that service both on Stencil and Headless. We see it more typically with Headless builds, just due to the wider availability of pre-built themes in the Stencil marketplace, but we do it for both of them and have completed projects on both sides there.
Yeah, and I would say that custom theme work, it's specialized work, but it's fun to go through that process with clients. Like that is an exciting time in a business journey, just because many times, right, when you're migrating websites, there's an opportunity to improve upon things that have been the status quo for 3 to 5, sometimes 7 years, and that's always fun to be a part of that. On the Anchor Group side. So you've talked a little bit about, you've hinted at doing some development on the back end of a website. Earlier you mentioned we kind of put them in the bucket of quote unquote extensions, right? And you mentioned that's work in the back end. So we've discussed the front end, talk about the theme. Now let's get into the back end of these extensions. What are the roles and responsibilities of a developer in that back end, in that extension bucket?
Yeah, so BigCommerce has an open or headless API that's available to you whether you're on a headless storefront or not. So if you're using Stencil, you can still tap into that API with external scripts.
And Max, I'm gonna pause you here because I feel like some people might get confused by the word stencil. So if anybody's confused out there, stencil is essentially the term given to themes that are developed in the native, page builder and theme environment within BigCommerce. Max, other stuff to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And then just the opposite of that, or the other option that's available, is headless, which are themes that are built with the BigCommerce API, but a external front end. So think something like React or Next.js. If you're familiar with kind of modern front end frameworks, you would use something like that. So that API that is used to build storefronts, there's also multiple APIs that allow you to access the back end of the site from other scripts or other servers that you may run, or serverless functions that are living in AWS, or maybe you have endpoints in your ERP. We can really access BigCommerce from any software system that allows us to make an API call. So when we talk about extensions, and even as we get into integrations, they kind of both fit together here. We're talking about accessing that BigCommerce API to create functionality that isn't necessarily natively supported with BigCommerce. So say you need a super specific order export functionality that it doesn't exist in BigCommerce. We can go into the orders API that BigCommerce provides for us, and we can create that export. Or I'm just trying to think of another example off the top of my head, and I don't have one, unfortunately. But we can create custom functionality with what BigCommerce makes available to us, which are these API endpoints, and we can kind of do a lot with that.
A lot of times where I've seen that custom functionality being built out is really for the operational side of a business, right? When I think the front end, when I think theme development, I think like the CMO of a business, right? Or the director of marketing. But when we talk about the back end and building out the extensions in there, as you've mentioned, doing some custom development, that really tends to work more on the operational side of the business, right? When we get into like understanding the order flow process or order fulfillment process, managing customers in the back end, and that sort of thing. So that's how that's how I internalize in my mind the split kind of between the front end development work that a BigCommerce developer does versus the back end kind of extension type work that a BigCommerce developer does. And really, I'll just echo what you said, but in that back end extension, that's really the custom work, the custom developer work. We kind of leave the bounds of native configuration, and we kind of enter the realm of like, okay, we're doing some custom work. We're extending the capabilities of the BigCommerce native platform. We're kind of adding an addition onto the house, if it were, right? For a little example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Just creating functionality that isn't natively available. And a lot of the times, yeah, it does end up leading to customizations around business operations, or then what we'll get into next, I think, is integration.
That's exactly right. Let's dive into integrations a little bit. This is something that we work a lot with clients on, is setting up integrations between their critical software platforms. And, of course, their e-commerce platform like BigCommerce is going to be, for many companies, one of their main sales channels with their customers. For some companies, it's the only sales channel with their customers if they're fully online. And so an integration is essentially connecting your e-commerce website to those other software platforms you use outside of the BigCommerce environment. We work a lot here at Anchor Group with a software called NetSuite, which is an ERP system owned by Oracle. Half of our business here at Anchor Group is solely devoted to working on the NetSuite ERP products, right? Second half of our business is doing e-commerce build-outs like Max and I are talking about today. So as a natural part of that business model, right, we work with a lot of clients who have an e-commerce front end, use NetSuite on the back end, and we have to fill the void to create an integration that works between the two. So Max, chat with us a little bit about how an integration works and why it's important for a business.
Yeah, so integrations can work in a couple different ways. You have direct API to API integrations, which is where, we'll use the NetSuite BigCommerce example, but we'll just take NetSuite. NetSuite has a scripting engine that we have access to. So we write NetSuite scripts and they go directly to BigCommerce, and that would be like a direct API to API integration. And then on the other side, we have kind of these hub and spoke model, or these middleware approaches, which is where we'll send a request from something like NetSuite to a middleware, which will then flow through to BigCommerce. At Anchor Group, we do integrations for both needs. So we work on additional platforms that kind of act as that middleware. And then we also can do direct integrations to BigCommerce. So if you have whatever the system may be that has an API available to it, we can write some code that allows us to map those two APIs together and move data between the two systems.
And that's really where the BigCommerce developer comes in, right? It's like the one actually writing that custom code. Not only if there are pre-made integration flows, maybe a BigCommerce developer is starting that configuration, but usually, right, there are some custom flows that need to be created to carry data back and forth, and that's really where I feel like the strength of a BigCommerce developer who knows how to work with APIs, who knows really, really technical language and can really solution design for some complex data flow needs. I feel like that's kind of the superpower of a BigCommerce developer.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's where we, on the development side, we spend the time writing that middleware code, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's just as simple as a script for whatever you need to do. But that's where, as developers, we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah. So Max, you've built out a couple integrations. You have experience doing that. What's one of the more challenging integration scenarios where like a BigCommerce developer needed to be involved in it, right? It wasn't just as simple as, click here, click there, and we're ready to rock. Like where was your skill set really needed in order to make an integration flow very successfully for a client?
Yeah, I think probably the place we see it the most is with an ERP to e-commerce integration. So in most cases, that's NetSuite to BigCommerce for us here at Anchor Group.
But Max, what's an example of, something you had to go in there and customize or set up, where your skill set, your understanding of the APIs in both software systems, and along with the middleware in this situation, like talk us through an example like that. What was a complex thing you need to you solve?
I think the one that we're seeing right now is we have a client who's using NetSuite for their ERP. They're managing their product data in a totally fine way in their ERP. It's just not a way that BigCommerce loves to consume the data in. So they handle custom fields in NetSuite a little bit differently than BigCommerce wants them to handle custom fields. So we have to do some work in that middleware connection, some scripting that says, hey, if we see this case, this is how we have to map the custom fields to BigCommerce. If we get this other case over here, we need to handle it with these mappings. So when we have to do kind of those on the fly mappings, that's one case where we kind of have to go in and do some additional development, and it gets a little more complicated than just turning on the sync over here, turning on the sync over there, and letting the data flow between. The other case that we see frequently is when you have data in two systems, but only some of the data needs to come through. So creating some custom fields in system one that say, hey, we want this value to sync through. And then somewhere in the middle, we have to check, we have to make sure, yep, it should be going to BigCommerce, and then send it through. So that's another scenario that we see pretty frequently, that often, depending on the integration system you're using or software in the middle, there's some extra development work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, those are great examples. Now, one thing I do want to point out just about how Anchor Group is different than some other companies in the industry is that here at Anchor Group, we do not have like a homegrown integration software. We haven't created our own integration software, but we take what we consider like a true client-first approach to this, meaning when we work with clients, Max, I know you and I have both been on discoveries and solution designs with many clients about this, but it's like we take in the information, we assess their needs, and then we're able to really advise on the right integration solution out there for them. And sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, it might literally be writing, a direct API to API script based on their ERP they're running in the background to their BigCommerce environment. Sometimes that's just the simple fix, the simple need at the time. But a lot of the companies, we work with who are in the true ERP market, right? They're in NetSuite or they're in a different ERP, maybe a Microsoft system. Like those companies generally have a solid foundation and they've got room to grow. They've got room to scale. And so when we take this approach to really understand somebody's business needs, it gives us the ability to really advise them and steer them in a direction that we feel it is really oriented towards the client's best interest, because we want our clients to grow, and we want them to have the best success with their integrations. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing I like about the way that we do it. And I know, Max, you mentioned the hub and spoke model and that sort of thing, but that's how we get there, right? Mm-hmm. Is by being able to just talk with people, be real, understand their problems, their challenges, and then offer solutions that aren't only going to work 6 months from now or a year from now, but years down the road. So Max, we've covered a lot here today. We've covered kind of the three buckets that a BigCommerce developer works in. The implementation bucket, thinking about the front end of an e-commerce website. We've talked about the back end, the extensions, as we like to say, extending the functionality that's natively available in a platform like BigCommerce. And we've spoken about integrations. As we start to wrap things up, I do just want to touch on one more topic, and we mentioned this a couple of different times, but that's headless commerce, and specifically headless commerce on BigCommerce. Mm-hmm. Now, the cool thing about headless commerce is, you said earlier, Max, that like decouples the front end and the back end, and it really gives you freedom on the front end to choose the software, the tech stack that you want on your front end to be the most successful, while using BigCommerce in the back end for like that operational side of things. Would you have anything to add, Max, just to like the way headless works?
No, I think that pretty much hammers the nail on the head. It just allows you to bring your own stack, which is kind of the most important piece of headless commerce. It lets you have that modern front end functionality with the powerful e-commerce engine that is BigCommerce. So.
That's right. So talk to us about the role of a BigCommerce developer in headless commerce. How involved are you in building out the tech stack, advising or consulting on different software to use? How involved are you in actually the development of the front end, or making sure, everything is, even though they are decoupled, making sure that everything, the front end and the back end, are working together? Talk to us a little bit about that, because headless commerce is popular right now. There's a lot of buzzworthiness going around, especially in the BigCommerce space, and it can be complex.
Yeah.
So let's demystify it right now.
Yeah, so if you decide that headless is an operation that you, or an option, excuse me, that you'd like to explore, we recommend starting with BigCommerce Catalyst, which is kind of an out of the box, ready to go e-commerce store for headless commerce. It comes with a pre-configured theme, but that's where we kind of start to step in. Is we'll go in. They only have one theme option. There's plans to add more. There might already actually be more by now. It's moving pretty quickly as a product. And kind of customize Headless to fit your use case. Headless out of the box, very similar to Stencil, has currently I think it's up to like 90%. Don't quote me on that. But like feature completeness as far as Stencil goes, I know the one place that is still being developed out quite a bit is B2B Edition. And we start there. So that's a Next.js storefront, and it uses React on the front end. And we go from there. We look at your theme needs, and we kind of would start development from there. So that's looking at customizing the theme for the most part, and then any additional customizations that you need to bring into the front end. And we kind of work from there. So that's where we like to start at Anchor Group. There are other options that will work just fine as well, but if you're interested, we could for sure talk about. If you don't want to use Catalyst to start with, you could start completely from scratch with your own framework, but Catalyst is going to lower that cost of entry, and it has the features ready to go out of the box, so you're kind of ready to get rolling with it.
That's right. And one thing I would like to point out to kind of echo those remarks is, as the months go by, as the quarters go by, as the years go by, this idea of headless commerce, specifically in BigCommerce, it's going to become more affordable. The features are only going to get better, only going to be built up more proven, tested, and that sort of thing. So if you're a business owner or business leader and you're thinking about headless commerce, it's probably a good idea just to learn more about it, to get educated on how it could impact your business here in the future. And here's a natural progression for getting to headless commerce, right? Say, for example, you're on a different e-commerce hosting platform right now, or maybe a homegrown solution. If you think headless commerce might be the right choice for you, and you're excited about what it could hold in 3 years from now or 5 years from now for your business, then a natural progression could be migrating to BigCommerce today, maybe in a couple years or a year from now, tacking on BigCommerce B2B Edition to your normal Stencil storefront. BigCommerce B2B Edition, you can check out our stuff on the YouTube channel or on BigCommerce website if you aren't familiar with it. Essentially, it's just one app you get on your website, and it gives you like a whole slew of B2B features, like managing quotes, managing invoices. It builds out essentially, it takes my account and essentially builds out a customer portal, a buyer portal, so that your B2B buyers can just have more autonomy, more control over their business and how it interacts with your business. So a natural progression, if you migrate to BigCommerce, would be after a year of being on the platform, maybe you tack on B2B Edition. Then maybe a year or two down the line, then you shift into headless commerce, right? Once BigCommerce has time to continue to improve the tech stack and the features they have built out, as Max was saying. So there's really a natural progression if you migrate to BigCommerce in order to get onto headless commerce in the future. As the prices continue to go down and the features continue to increase.
Yeah, and then on the other side, it is worth noting that some businesses probably are ready for headless commerce now, depending on business needs. So that is also an option to explore if you've done more research on it, if you feel that it could be right for your business. It could be worth exploring even today, especially with just kind of the steps that BigCommerce continues to take, lowering the cost of entry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's also important to note that Headless Commerce also is not the right fit for everybody. And that's not a bad thing. Like whether you're going with Stencil, which once again is the BigCommerce native website builder tool, like that's not a bad tool either. That's strong in its own right. And Headless Commerce, you need a team that's a little bit more involved, right? You need an internal team that's pretty excited to be at their job and to be working on modern tech stacks and that sort of thing. So either option isn't, it's all based on the business need, right? You can't say Headless Commerce is better for everyone, nor can you say Stencil is better for everyone. It really depends on the business need. But you're exactly right, Max. There are some companies out there that could really benefit from going to Headless Commerce, and there are some that it might be too much to bite off at one time for them. But that's where working with a BigCommerce developer and a company, like here at Anchor Group or other BigCommerce agencies out there, that's where we can help you along the path to consult, to give you, show you some life experience that we've had working with other clients to help, steer you in the right direction. It's going to be a good business decision for you for years to come. Max, any final thoughts on being a BigCommerce developer?
No, not that I can think of right now. I think we covered kind of the most of what we do. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it with this. At the end of the day, we're also business consultants, and we want to do what's best for your business. So at Anchor Group, we will be sure as developers, as we're helping do implementations, integrations, that we're making the suggestion that we feel is good for your business as well, and kind of help guide you in that way, especially in areas that require more technical knowledge that some business stakeholders might not be as knowledgeable in. So,
yeah, that's right. Here at Anchor Group, we like to demystify the complex, and that's a good way to put it, Max. So thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Anchor Group podcast, where we met with Max, who shed some light on what a BigCommerce developer does and the roles a BigCommerce developer has in developing or maintaining a BigCommerce website. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can check it out on YouTube, Spotify. We also have more information on our website, anchorgroup.tech, or you can check out our YouTube channel, where you will find helpful videos about some of the nitty-gritty details around managing an e-commerce website, managing integrations, as we talked about, or managing some ERP data specifically surrounding the NetSuite ERP. Max, thanks for joining. Hope to have you on in the future again to talk about some more BigCommerce development deals. But until then, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Thank you, Max.